Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I was saying before to our panelists, this is the first Edu in Log session ever at Log World, and I'm super excited about it. I really want to thank Ulrich and Donna for believing in creating this track, and I think it's going to be super beneficial for the industry and for everybody to learn more about education in the localization industry. And to be honest, I couldn't be in better company for this first session. I'm surrounded by la creme de la creme of the media and game localization industry in both industry and academia. So I'm really excited about this panel. Before we start, I would love to introduce our panelists, and I will start with Carme Mangiron. Hello, Carme. Thank you for being here. Carme is the program director of the MA in Audiovisual Translation at the Autonomous University of Barcelona. She has extensive experience as a researcher in the game localization field, being one of the pioneers in this field, actually. Carme has published numerous academic articles and books. I don't know how many, but many, many, many. Almost hundreds of them. And she also has hands-on experience in the gaming industry because she was a translator for Square Enix a few years back, specifically for the Final Fantasy saga. So thank you so much for joining us, Carmen. Next, I will introduce Jorge Diazintas. Jorge, and I'm not exaggerating, is the father of subtitling academic research. He was the first one talking about this topic in the translation studies field. He was a pioneer in the academic field, introducing the topic of audiovisual translation. Jorge has also published numerous academic articles, again, hundreds of them, and books over the years around the topics of audiovisual translation. And he proactively collaborates with the industry to improve education and also create guidelines. He might be talking about this a little bit later. He's currently a lecturer at the Center for Translation Studies at the University College of London. Thank you so much, Jorge, for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Then we also have Magda. Magda is a subtitling pro. She started as translation project manager at the European Captioning Institute. To then move to account director and director of operations roles at Deluxe, one of the biggest media localization companies in the industry, where she has been an instrumental part of the localization department for the last 11 years. Nowadays, she's the vice president of localization operation, where she leads global processes and operations, and she's responsible for subtitling, scripting, audio description, and creative dubbing teams. So, I mean, she's the one to be here talking about this today. Thank you so much, Magda, for joining.
Thanks for having me, Helen.
And last, of course, but not least, we have Michaela Belluzzo from Keywords Studio. She's the game localization master. I really admire her for her career. She started off as a subtitler as well and project manager, but then she quickly moved to the game localization industry, where she was, where she has been working for the past 2 decades. She was first the head of production on localization and integration at Electronic Arts, one of the biggest gaming companies in the world. Then she moved to Africa to develop her role as fundraising manager and assistant to program director for the NGO Ricerca and Cooperazione, which I thought it was amazing and I wanted to share in your introduction. And finally, she joined the Keywords team, where she has been the global resource manager for the past 7 years. So thank you so much, Michaela, for being here today with us as well.
Thanks to you, Belen and Lockwood.
Awesome. So yeah, that was the introduction. And as you know, the topic of this panel is the media and game localization industry and what are the challenges and opportunities for education. So the purpose of the panel was to have an open discussion, conversation between academic researchers and industry peers. And yeah, let's get started then. So I have a first question for all of our panelists, and maybe we can start with Michaela, as she was the last one to be introduced. So the question is, do you believe there's still a gap between the industry needs and what we teach at the universities, or that's a thing of the past? And what are the main challenges on your side, for example, when you are trying to recruit new people?
Thank you very much, Belen. So talking about the gaming industry, there is certainly more awareness out there that the gaming localization industry, or vertical, if you want to, we call it like this, is a profession. But I think there's still quite some work that we can all do, both us from the industry and the academia. Not Carme, who's already doing a very good job, but that does not happen everywhere in the world, where gaming localization is not seen as a profession that you can specialize in, make a living on, and with a variety of jobs, which go from linguists to PMing, as long as you have an interest in language and in your own culture and other cultures too when it comes to PMing. So work has been done since my time, 25 years ago, when I graduated. More needs to be done in terms of awareness. In terms of skills gap, it would be great if we can talk a little bit about the technical challenges that we may have. I wouldn't call them gaps, but definitely challenges of when somebody has just graduated and comes to work within an industry that nowadays, I'd say 90% of the time, does use technology to support the translation process. In our case, the main technology is certainly CAT tools. And the knowledge of CAT tools, any CAT tools, without specifying any of them, because once you know one, it's easy to learn all the others in terms of concept. We would like to see students, trainee, internships with a little bit more knowledge of how a CAT tool works and how much it can help you. You and the team you work with, because in our industry, usually there's always more than one translator at the same time working on the same type of content.
Okay. Thank you so much, Michaela, for your contribution. And now, since you called out Carme, I would like to ask her next. And Carme, do you agree with the challenges that Michaela mentioned, and how do you tackle that in your programs? And what are the gaps that you might also perceive, or challenges that you have when teaching students game localization?
Yes, I completely agree. Awareness, very important. Like some countries, like Spain, the UK, there's quite a bit of training on game localization. In Italy as well, a little bit, but in others, no. So definitely awareness of the profession. And indeed, yes, the technical aspects, of course, CAT tools. Yes, we teach them to use CAT tools. But basically, we always, I think, trying to keep up with the industry. So CAT tools, post-editing, variables and tag, a bit of programming language. But the main challenge we have is that usually we don't have enough time. Like the programs do not, it's only a subject among many other subjects. So in our case, it's 18 hours. So there's so little we can do, but we teach CAD tools at a different module. So therefore, we combine, sometimes we try to do that so we can focus on certain elements and then and post-editing in a different subject, but still it is hard to keep up with the industry needs, but we try to do it.
Thank you so much, Carme. And Jorge, you were nodding where Carme was talking about the challenge of not having enough time. So I want to ask you next, what are the main challenges that you see, the potential gaps that you have experienced with your students and the industry, and how are you tackling it in your programs? Thank you.
Yes, in my case, I deal mostly with subtitling in my teaching, though we offer a wide range of activities there. And I think awareness is not one of our main issues, as subtitling has been out and about pretty much in late years, and with all the explosion of video on demand and streaming services, is pretty well rooted in the profession. We do encounter other issues and other programs and other problems and challenges, particularly technology. Well, still, we haven't really come up with anything that is appealing for anyone in terms of cut tools and subtitling. I know some companies have been developing their APIs and they've been trying hard to combine both. Recent announcements of companies in subtitling and companies in cut tools developments have been announced that in 6 months or so, things are going to be improving and they're going to be much more integrated. But we're still struggling with that sort of performativity of the technology. One other issue that we are encountering as well is in terms of language preparation as such. When the services, when the offer and the catalogs of many of these providers is diversifying, then we're all consuming now topically Korean drama, more or less better subtitled in certain languages, but this is a new experience that is bringing in new issues. And you know, as the Squid Game has proven lately, issues of quality in certain areas, and how do we deal with the variety of languages. So this is an area as well that is challenging because mostly and traditionally, all language training is being from English into other languages or from really traditional languages like Spanish, French, German into maybe Italian into English. But beyond that, it's quite challenging to just prepare people. And sometimes it's not either cost effective because there aren't enough students to be taking those courses. So this is an area that we need to also look into and see how we can resolve.
Awesome. Thank you, Jorge, for your contribution. And now, Magda, we're talking about subtitling and the challenges with different languages now being introduced in the catalogs of the streaming platforms. What are the challenges that you've been experiencing when hiring or trying to hire new people for the industry? And is there any specific gap that you have perceived in these last few years?
Thanks so much, Belinda. And I definitely agree with Jorge, but also with Michaela and Carmen. So our challenges in the media industry aren't really very different, to be honest, right? New markets, new language combinations where the direct language pairs aren't really quite available readily within the subtitling or audiovisual specialization, right? So definitely, Jorge, as you mentioned, you know, there may not be enough students, but there probably haven't really been enough of the demand, right? Regular demand. So people could actually be interested in saying, well, I do want to go ahead and start learning this because there is going to be regular work available for us. So there are definitely specialists there, but there aren't enough of them, right? So we want to sort of, with the onset of a lot of regional original versions that are being created by big platforms, I think that sort of wave of specialists will definitely be needed. And we're kind of a little behind right now already because we're unprepared, but the content is here or will be here very soon. So we'll just need to keep catching up, I think. Language variety is definitely a big thing. CAT tools and sort of the integration, right, of the supporting technology to make the process, the translation process easier and faster for the subtitlers so that they can, you know, do more work, obviously, and we can fulfill the demand much faster as well. Volumes have definitely been growing because there is more volume created, more content created, and a lot of content is being repurposed. So speaking of such of the skill set, in our industry, it's not just translation from scratch, but also sort of repurposing of existing content. And what's really important when you are dealing with existing content, right, and you need to repurpose to a new version potentially, or upgrade an existing translation. I would also want to say that perhaps as far as translators or subtitlers goes, that was one thing. In our industry, we do have also a lot of other roles, supporting roles, project management, client services, right? And the industry is evolving in such a way that volumes obviously are growing. So project managers, are asked to manage more projects at the same time, work with big data, big spreadsheets or new databases, right? So again, a convergence of what are you really in for, right? You could be a translator, but you could also be a project manager. And then when coming into this professional world, working with a lot of emails, Outlook, some of that professional skill set is also a gap that we see for newcomers for us.
Perfect, Magda. Thank you so much. Very interesting. And actually, you mentioned one thing that made me think, because Michaela was talking about technology as well, right? And I think technology in the gaming industry is quite standardized. Like, we use CAD tools and that's it. There's no way around. But in the media localization industry, the implementation of new tools, of course, subtitling tools have been there since the very beginning, otherwise you cannot subtitle, but the integration of CAD tools with subtitle tools or machine translation or whatever the future will bring, that's something that it's still not quite standardized. So how also are we training subtitlers, not only the new ones, but the old ones that are used to work in a certain way and now they might need to change. So those are gaps that we might be experiencing due to the evolution of technology in your space as well.
Agreed.
And talking about, you've been talking about exactly that you need, the volumes are growing, and we've been hearing a lot, specifically in the media, but also in the gaming localization industry, about talent crunch, right? So I wanted to ask you and Michaela again about talent crunch, and where are you identifying this talent crunch and how is it affecting you at the moment?
Question for me, right?
Yeah, you and then Michaela, yes.
Okay. Well, this is indeed a big challenge, and we are really seeing talent crunch across the board, Belen, really from the translators and subtitlers, right, skilled in a variety of language combinations. As new emerging markets are coming, there aren't enough translators, subtitlers to actually fulfill the volume. So, we do have quite a large pool of translators that we collaborate with historically, but we know that sort of new platforms will be launching more content in the coming months, and those are new territories for them. Therefore, we need to kind of be prepared to do this work in a more speedy manner. So how do you do that? Obviously, you need more people. You need more translators, right? Who is available or who is ready and trained in that specialization. So translators for sure, project management as well, because someone needs to manage these projects as well and assign the work. QAers, a lot of the content, right, that we output that requires star QCs. Also looking at, as the talent crunch exists, we're also seeing a crunch in recruitment on the recruitment side, right? How we onboard, find people faster, how we recruit them, how we test them and put them into our pool. Script creators, dialogue list creators. This is sort of, a more emerging market as well, as we go into new original content creations from regional, from various regions. So that's where we see these talent crunches.
Perfect. Thank you, Magda. And Michaela, how about you in the gaming industry?
I can definitely share Magda's challenges, and maybe can also add that for us, soon after the pandemic, the volumes of content localization have immediately increased. And this year we've had probably the highest peaks we've ever had, where we've had to resource for languages, find new resources for languages that were in past years settled, as in we thought we had a considerable pool of experienced resources. On the other hand, the emerging markets, markets that have been emerging for the last couple of years, 3 years, again, they are now definitely picking up. And I'm talking about source languages other than English. So from Chinese, from Japanese, from Korean, where the awareness of localization concept, it's still, well, it's emerging, it's growing there. So the gap to fill is not only in terms of number of resources, but also of quality of the resources. So we have to start with translators who are very willing, but junior from a localization perspective. That requires quite some investment from all of us multi-language vendors. And well, we do have experience in it, but certainly recruiting for this type of markets, it's a longer process, and training virtually, and most of them being freelancers, it's a very nice experience. And that's where we are in terms of talent crunch for PMs and QAers. As I concentrate on translators in particulars, I can just share what Magda is saying, but cannot add more than that. Indeed, volumes require more management as well.
Okay, Michaela, thank you so much. This is super interesting. And going back to the university, Carmen, you haven't spoken in a few minutes. What should be the role of the university with these emerging industry needs? Or not the role, but what are also the limitations? Because sometimes, as you mentioned, it's difficult to keep up. There's a time limit. The programs might not be so easy to modify. So how do you envision, how can the university support these emerging needs as well?
Well, I think ideally, perhaps, of course, working with the industry, having internships, also cooperating between different universities, perhaps, like in the case of game localization, there's no degree, or there's not even an MA, perhaps would be the first step, a full MA on game localization, where we could learn anything, from PM, from all the CAD tools, a bit of programming, etc. So that would be ideal. But again, it's difficult sometimes. The universities, the structures are quite complicated, but perhaps with Jorge's university, our university, some industry partner, like some kind of cooperation like that, I think would be possibly the best way to move forward. And also what happens is that sometimes not so much LSPs, but game companies are very, very cagey with the information they provide, or with the cooperation with academia, obtaining training materials, etc. So that's quite hard. So unless we get some facilities or quid pro quo, or I don't know how to explain it, but if they were more open or willing to cooperate, we could speed up the process and really try to adjust to their needs. That's what I think. So a bit more cooperation between all of us, I think, would be ideal.
That's a very good point. At the end of the day, it's an investment for them, for the industry, because they will be benefiting from the well-trained professionals. And what do you think, Jorge? What should be the role of the university, or any initiatives that you're already developing?
Yes, I think the role of the universities and the trainers is changing as well slightly in the way we perceive ourselves. I think a lot more consultancies coming into the equation. So I think one thing is what we teach, which is much more academic, or can be much more academic, like an MA or a BA in further education and so on. But I think we mentioned earlier on, for instance, people that are working already in these fields, but technology is going a bit too fast for some of them, and they would like some sort of refreshing courses and new approaches to how translation can be done. And in that sense, I think, creating those programs which will be targeted to the precise needs of a company, perhaps in a particular language combination, or perhaps on a technical dimension, that will be something that could also help out in the situation here. I think that I'm currently involved in quite a few initiatives in this respect. On the one hand, for instance, there is no professional certification of subtitlers. There are quite a few professional certifications for translators, the American Translators Association, the Institute of Linguists in the UK, but nobody is professionally qualifying, certifying, for instance, subtitlers, translators for dubbing or video game localizers. And that could probably help the industry not having to do all the onboarding processes if they could really trust the origin or the preparation of those candidates. And then we've been working for a while in this particular project, which has been spearheaded by companies, associations, translators, freelance translators, and academics on a professional certification. And then another project in which I am involved, which is, as I mentioned earlier, on more consultancy level, is with Netflix, and is a program on training and adaptation, translation and adaptation for dubbing. It was initiated in Mexico in June, was pretty successful, and now we're rolling it out into different countries according to the needs perceived as well in the industry. And it's basically, it fulfills two criteria. It brings in new blood into the system, so new blood, but also diversified. So some of the candidates that are invited to take this course come from particular backgrounds, normally marginalized, whether racially, sexually, gender-based, or financially as well. And then also we bring in traditional people who are already in the industry with lots of knowledge of the industry, but that would like to be honing their skills in new areas, like, for instance, inclusive language or non-binary language, the new technology that is coming, and so on. So those are initiatives that go probably beyond the courses that I am already teaching at UCL, but that also try to bridge that sort of or establish that sort of bridge and connection with the industry.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, Jorge. I really like that forward thinking of Netflix, not only like filling the professional gap, but also the society gap that we're experiencing. And audiences and users are demanding more diversity in the content that these platforms are creating, different like stories by different people. And that should apply the entire supply chain, not only one part of it, but the entire thing. So I think that's pretty cool, and it's amazing that you're collaborating with them in improving diversity, also in the translation part. Awesome. So, and talking about ways that the academy and the industry can collaborate to improve the education of our future localizers. I know Carme has been collaborating for a long time with Keywords Studio, actually. So, and that's been pretty successful as far as I can tell. So would you like to share some words about that initiative?
Me? Yes. Well, we've been very lucky to be collaborating with Keywords, I think since 2011, the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona, where we were sending students first to Dublin. Then when they opened offices in Barcelona, we were sending one to Dublin, one to Barcelona for 3 months. And actually it was a great stepping stone. Like many of them have then, become employees of Keywords. Some of them are still working in Keywords in Dublin or in Barcelona. So I think this is wonderful because we try to prepare them, and then of course they get all the more training on the job, which is, how in the end you need to do it with game localization, because I think we're still miles away from certification or anything like that. When I listen to Jorge talking about subtitling, and we're still kind of taking baby steps. I don't know if you would agree, Michaela, but I think we cannot compare it. But yeah, it would be great. And I think internships, mentorship programs, if we could have them, having, for example, people from Keywords or the industry, come and talk to students, also tell them how exciting, because I think one conference from Keywords and we'll get like 25 students whose vocation is, translate, because when you hear the professionals talk about it, it's different than listening to me go on and on and on about it, So I think all these things definitely help. And as universities, we're always always really open, because what we want is to provide the best professionals, you know, which is good for the industry and also for our students and for us. And of course, this also feeds into research that you also need, you know, to be able to optimize processes, etc. So I think it would be a great circle if we can, you know, work together.
Sure, Jorge, please.
Yes, I'd just like to mention very briefly as well, you know, this idea, we've been mentioning a lot, this collaboration between industry and academia, which I think is essential in an area like translation and localization. But I think beyond that sort of horizontal collaboration, we should also be looking into vertical collaboration across universities, as Carmen was mentioning earlier, but also with universities in countries where the development of translation is still lagging behind. And it's probably going to take a while until it takes off because of vested interest in different countries and applied linguistics, comparative literature that probably take the bulk of all the academic effort in those countries. So I think, you know, establishing links with the countries, schools of translation, or schools of centers that want to become translation centers would also be a good initiative in you know, bringing out the good word of translation and audiovisual translation in particular.
Yeah, I love that idea, because as the Magda and Michaela are mentioning, one of the biggest challenges at the moment is with emerging markets. And how are you going to have well-trained professionals in those emerging markets if the universities or any other, you know, educational organizations are not able to provide that professional training, right? Because we were mentioning the other day when we were talking, like maybe some programs that are online in Europe and in the US, but then those programs are not accessible from a financial point of view to certain countries, so that won't work. What we want to do is to, you know, share what we've learned after a few years of teaching these areas and pass that to them so that they can improve and the whole industry can improve. So thank you for sharing that. And as Michaela was telling me the other day, like I picked one of the 2 best universities and trainers in the world for this specific area, which is audiovisual translation and gaming. So I'm kind of cheating, but
Yes.
of course it's not.
You are.
But of course it's not the same with other universities. So Michaela, maybe you want to share also a little bit about that, because I know you work with UAB, with Carmen, with the internships, but is that a common way of proceeding, or is there any other like gaps that still you can see in this area?
Indeed, you have cheated by bringing these 2. We have other collaborations, and others are we're building others, banking on the successful experience with the Universidad Autónoma de Barcelona. But we have actually been going around not only in Europe, but in the world, all the way to China, tried to run seminars to speak about localization as a whole, gaming localization in particular, but localization as a whole, because the only verticals there that were perceived as a professional were IT and medical, for example. Mm-hmm. And we don't want to steal from those verticals, but hey, you know, we do have, you know, gaming as well as subtitling as a very creative side of it that can be a very interesting part for translators. Difficult to understand when and how much you can be creative, how much you need to stick to the source. Mm-hmm. Or within gaming, a lot of translations are done out of context. It's quite complex. Localizing means doing a lot of research on your own or in teams. These are all things that are not easy for somebody who is still at university, even less if there's no translation course behind it, where you're actually taught that in order to translate, you actually have to learn, have to be curious about what you're translating. Regardless of what is the subject matter, you have to be curious and have a passion for it. So out there in the world, for example, recently I I was preparing for this, and imagine in Japan, there are no universities for translation.
Wow.
There are only private translation courses. And that's Japan. That's a country that, I mean, English into Japanese, Japanese into English are big languages. So yes, Jorge, if you put something together with like a network of universities, and you, Carme, I'll go around with you and start talking about localization in general.
Yeah, that would be amazing to have such a project out of this panel. So we can catch up offline about this. But thank you so much for sharing. And we are going into the last 10 minutes of the session. So I've seen a bunch of questions, and I think some of them are quite interesting from the audience. So if you don't mind, I will start directing these questions to you. I'm going to start by the last ones, okay? And these ones are for Carmen and Jorge. This one specifically that says from Janet Stewart. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your names. She's asking, requirements in the industry constantly changes. Do the universities follow up on how job descriptions are evolving to make sure they cover the industry needs in their curriculum? Jorge or Carmen?
We try. It's hard, but we try. Yes, we do keep an eye. I myself, I'm based in London, and we are surrounded by lots of creative companies. Video games on one side towards Old Street, and then towards Soho, we've got lots of film companies and so on. So we do keep an eye. We invite people every year to come to talk to us, and we are, for instance, now we're working with cloud-based systems to train our students on the technology that is being used in the industry. It's not easy, but it's not impossible either. And I think it's always an element that you can do in class, but also an element that you can instill in the students so that they also do some work outside of the class. So to motivate them by inviting people from the industry so that they can just do research on their own, find out what things they've been mentioning and so on. But yes, we try a little bit, but it doesn't come without its challenges and hurdles.
And yeah, we do as well. Like sometimes I even show them, I project, for example, I go Blizzard, what's Blizzard looking? So you need to be familiar, with the lore of Blizzard products. So if you go for an interview, if you don't play this game, learn everything. What does this company do, etc. Square Enix, creative writing. So we do a bit of creative writing. So yes, you do have to. Post editing, okay, bring it on. So you need to really, as much as you can, again, within the corset that you have from the universities, but we do, and we always discuss, we have a session where we talk about the profession, how to get in, the fees, ways to start as a tester, or, working with it, etc. So we try to keep up. It's the only way, because otherwise we'll be in a bubble that's completely separate from reality. So you do have to go to conferences, go to events like this, Game Global. It's anything that you can keep in touch, follow, LinkedIn, Twitter, what's going on, what's cooking, so trainers, we need to keep trained as well, to be able to train. So this is like the never-ending circle, but as academics, we like learning. So it's fine for us. I'm sure for Jorge as well, the Peter Pan complex of studying and, keep it going and transmitting it to our students.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so the short answer is yes. You try to keep up and you include these new things in the curriculum, but there are so many things to take into account that makes this not so easy to achieve sometimes. Okay, I got another question. I want to direct it to Magda this time from V. Suarez. I don't know your name, but Veronica, Vanessa, I don't know, Victor. So the question is, what is the best way to get into the industry? I've met many who apply to agencies, but do not always get callbacks. Is it due to the quality of the candidate or how much work the agency has? So Magda, do you have any tips for people who wants to start in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Virginia. Thanks for that question. Very good question. Definitely. And this is kind of, in a way, a little bit of like a chicken and the egg too. I would say, well, it definitely, searching on the internet and looking up which clients or which vendors. In our case, we are vendors to our clients, and we're clients to all the translators, right? So who is out there really performing the this type of localization that you're interested in? So in the media and entertainment, there's Deluxe and there's a number of others as well out there. And we typically post on our website links to join our community and become translators. And typically there is sort of a recruitment phase, right, where you are asked to take a test as well and pass on the test. So you're getting that evaluation. And as Jorge, you mentioned, there isn't right now a specific certification that could actually help us, right, immediately sort of onboard people without having to go through that layer. But definitely looking those links up, and possibly there are also links to kind of connect with specific groups. On our end, we have a community management team and specifically dedicated talent acquisition team that can be contacted. And there are ebbs and flows in the sort of supply and demand as well, right? As we don't want to sort of oversaturate our translator pools, because we want to make sure that we keep people engaged, so we give them opportunities to do the work. On the other hand, when we have a talent crunch, we are obviously opening up the recruitment in certain languages, and there you will definitely hear about it on various kind of social media. So I definitely recommend being very active on LinkedIn and looking up any kind of contacts, within the various agencies, within the various LSVs, and seeing if we're recruiting in particular languages or not. But also words of mouth, and as you expand your network and you meet other translators and other subtitlers within your language, but also in other languages, you can certainly get to know who are the people responsible for this recruitment effort, on our end. If you are interested in in-house roles, right, because translator roles are typically freelance based, but if you're interested in in-house roles, there's definitely career pages on our websites as well, and we're actively posting that we're recruiting. So your LinkedIn, your Facebook pages, there's definitely information out there. And I would maybe pose a question like, if the community doesn't feel like we're present enough, I would love to hear that as well, right? What could we do to help to be open, to be known that we're definitely open and interested in in recruiting more talent.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Magda. Super useful tips. And I think we have time for one more question. So I'm going to pick this one directed to Michaela from Kirill. And I like that because it's a different way of educating, but while in the job. So the question is, what's your experience with feedback on translation as given to more junior linguists by more senior ones? How does it help them improve over time? And what best practices are there? If you have anything to share around that.
Thank you, Kirill, for this question. We have set up a few years ago, because we do like to also onboard people with great potentials, but are still very junior. We've always done it and will continue to do it on emerging languages, but not only. We have a whole quality evaluation system, not a control system, but a quality monitoring system that allows our more junior resources to grow over time by being reviewed always by a more senior one, either external or internal. And it's a structured feedback. It does take time and cost investment, but it engages, it allows us to communicate in a very professional way on a language basis with the translators. And most of the time it works in growing them, and it works in getting them feel they are respected, very respected in their profession, because everything it's structured. It's not just about Emil, you've done wrong here, you've done right there. It's all very well detailed. We have a number of steps we go through so that this evaluation is extremely objective and based on purely the linguistic part of things. That's the only way I've known in my career as translator and now to grow translators from a linguist perspective. I mean, they already come with good linguistic skills, but localization, as we said, is about so much else around it that we needed this quality monitoring system for the juniors and even for the not so juniors to help grow together and keep the quality as high as we wanted, because the audience out there is not just about quantity of volume quantities, but also about quality. I'm sure we've all witnessed both in subtitling and in gaming.
Very passionate audiences.
Exactly. So what we used to do 20 years ago were fun translations compared to what we have to do now. And well, we have a recent example with with Squid Games, but not only.
Okay, thank you so much, Michaela. We are a little bit running out of time, so I wanted just to thank you so much, the panelists. Again, you are wonderful. Thank you so much, really. And thank you, Logword, for this opportunity to share all this knowledge with the audience. And thank you, the audience, for being here today and asking very interesting questions. I'm sorry we didn't have time for all the questions. If you want, you can ping us anytime on LinkedIn, or me specifically, and I'm happy to try to gather feedback. So thank you so much and see you around.
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.